Hello and welcome to Give Toke, the show that elevates the conversation about cannabis to a higher level. I'm your host, Paul O'Donoghue, and before we dive in, a quick note, the views expressed on this podcast are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of our employers. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, you can find me on Instagram at Give Toke or drop us a line at giveandtoke@gmail.com. Today I'm joined by my friend and guest, Jessica Peros, founder of the Green Room HQ, someone who has lived cannabis from legacy to legal and is now building a real space for community, advocacy and connection. Jess, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. Hearing you do that was very iconic. It felt surreal to be on the receiving end of that introduction.
It's funny, it's a little sneak behind the curtain here for the guests. I am trying to streamline the process by now recording the intro in front of the guest. I recently had Joel and Bash from Exotican on, and we recorded in person, and they kept joking about, oh, he's on now, he's doing the voice. So yeah, you get to hear me do the voice.
I love it. I love it. Now, I know when I first started listening to you, Paul, I just thought you had one of the most soothing and well-received voices for podcast or radio. So thank you so much for delivering it for us for all those years. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, we'll see if this devolves into some kind of ASMR. Is that what the kids call it these days? But we'll try and keep it on topic. Now, Jess, if you had to sum up your cannabis journey so far in one strain, what would it be and why?
I feel like I'm going to cross strains on this one. It's a little bit of some OG, that Jack Herer, that OG activism in there, crossed with a little bit of train wreck. You know, the train wreck is something you just can't keep your eyes off. It's something you'll always remember. And of course, at least for myself, those roots run deep as far as the advocacy and the, changing of the narrative around cannabis for sure. So I couldn't pick one. I had to cross them, and I'll do some pheno hunting down the line.
Well, for the sake of culture, we know that everything's a hybrid these days. So there you go. You've even hybridized your own experience, and I love it. Let's give the listener some context. You founded the Green Room Hydro along with your husband, and that has evolved into the Green Room HQ as you've moved on from that business, a real hub for patient advocacy, industry insight, and community connection. Take us from Hydro to HQ. How did this journey happen?
It certainly has been a journey. I feel like the cannabis realms and industries are, seasons that continually evolve. So 8 years as Green Room Hydroponics and Organics, Green Room Hydro, servicing the East Coast, the nationwide. We had some New Zealand community in there as well. And we were able to build really great connections and deep trust with our Grow Your Own community. It's quite large here in Australia, and it has been for a really long time. I was able to connect with whether it was cultivators from a legacy or a license background, whether it was brands, cultivators, scientists, breeders, growers, patients, consumers, like the whole mixing pot, right? It's amazing if you were to spend a day in a hydro shop, what walks through the door. And being able to bring that knowledge into my clinic space. So I ended up kind of doing a double role as far as working in a really amazing community cannabis specialist clinic and bringing my knowledge to that space. And then being in both sides was a real eye-opener. I saw there was a lot of gaps. So there's a lot of misinformation. There was just this ability where it almost felt like there were people in silos, like the medical and the doctors, whether it be the pharmacists, the patients, people cultivating and pushing for change. So when I decided at the end of last year that I just wanted to add value, I wanted to fill the gap that I saw. And due to building the Green Room Hydro community platform, I already had, a few thousand real Australian consumers, growers, patients, or those in the industry, and knew that it was coming to my time. 8 years, I was looking to pivot out. So was James. And so when we sold the store at the beginning of the year, it was a natural progression into no longer feeling censored, I guess, in what I had to say. There was a certain amount that I could and couldn't say from a hydro store perspective, but very much so working in clinic. And it frustrated me. It frustrated me that common knowledge and education and conversations even were not being had. And I just wanted to be able to create a safe space. So obviously I identify as a woman, and I'm a wife and a mother and a daughter. Very few of us in this space with this type of voice in this type of industry. I knew that I just naturally had the ability to have that voice. I built that community of people. We were very trusted and respected. And so I was able to kind of amalgamate the two worlds, let's say. A lot of people told me this could never happen. You
Yeah.
can't mix traditional and legal. It's just two opposite ends of the spectrum. And I know that that's not true because my lived experience is that I sit on both sides and we're all not too different, guys. It's like 3 degrees of separation type thing.
That is such a good point. It's about finding the common ground rather than the points of difference, because we're all going to see and feel different things and want different things. I think the TGA consultations really bring that out. I think a lot of people are really worried about the changes when ultimately you've got a medical industry trying to legitimize itself, whilst then you've got people on the other side just wanting quote unquote recreational legalization. So you mentioned double roles. Some people would almost consider you a double agent. That you're on these two sides of the fence that are
For
sometimes
sure.
contradictory. How
Mm.
how have you balanced the movement between those spaces, living in those worlds, and kind of what are the biggest mindset differences? Because we hear the people on the culture side being like, goddamn corporate cannabis. We hear people on the medicinal side being like, this is not for recreational. There's clearly a happy medium to be had. What have you noticed between those two sides in quotation marks?
It does feel like two sides sometimes, and I do feel like I play Switzerland to a degree in the
Yeah.
middle. I try to offer a balanced take or perspective, let's say, because I feel like I've been able to witness, be a part of things that other people may not see. So, for example, right, we do hear a lot from, the culture, I'm going to swear, drop an F bomb on this one, but
Please.
like the fuck medical.
Yeah.
It's that narrative. And that really grinds my gears because as much as I am championing and pushing for decriminalization, legalization, whether that's descheduling out of, there's steps we've got to take, right? Descheduling it out of Schedule 8. But then also we have a cohort of people that just want to be able to have access, right? But they've never seen the outstanding outcomes that patients with really severe diagnoses, or they might be on a lot of like some polypharmacy and they need a doctor to help them. They might be a pediatric and they're quite young, or they're in the geriatric category, right? And they don't want to be messing around with street, let's say, cannabis products. They want a doctor to be able to guide them through, go through the titration, stabilize them so that their quality of life is better at the other end. And I was able to, at the same time, be witnessing that and on a daily basis know that that is true. And then stepping into a hydro store where some people do have that anti medical kind of thinking and process. And I would be championing, going, you have no idea the outcome that I just saw for, like, Gladys, who's 88, who has suffered with insomnia for decades. And we gave her some CBD, well, doctor, obviously, gave her some CBD, a balanced oil. I helped her titrate over 2 weeks. She's now getting 8 hours of rest, going to bowls, being with her family, living her best life. So it's those conversations that I don't know if we've seen enough bridging of the two worlds yet to be able to have these more robust conversations where we can counter that by saying, yeah, I get it. You want access as an adult. You want to be able to cultivate your own. I get that. But we need to protect a medical model as well. There are so many people, hundreds of thousands, that benefit off what we currently have, albeit it can be way better. We're looking at the changes ahead of us. None of us know what it'll be. So navigating those two worlds, I've got the backbone, I've got the ability to stand up and say, no, let me impart you with this little bit of knowledge. Then you can, take it for what it is. But I'm happy to counter that conversation with people. And I guess just due to the unique perspective and the interactions I have with the culture, with the community, the patients, amazing doctors, the brands out there, the ones that align and know that these two worlds can amalgamate. It's just not in the way we see it right now.
Yeah, well, I certainly don't want to put words into your mouth, but I know that like an element for me, it does feel a lot like gatekeeping at times, where it's just like, I want this thing to remain mine. I want this thing to remain
Yeah.
for me and my local underground community. I don't want this to be mainstream. There's a lot of protection that I certainly understand. You know, I lived it firsthand in Canada as federal legalization was rolled out and wiped out a beautiful existing 30-year-old culture in Vancouver. Like I've seen it firsthand where what we already have is fantastic. You know, Trudeau, you've come and fucked this up, is what the kind of common refrain was, whether I agree with that or not. It is about broad access. Like I've consumed cannabis for my entire adult life from a therapeutic level. I do not have access to good underground cannabis. Like I don't have a mate down
Oh,
the
it's
street or a
few
mate.
and far between.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I don't like to hear that sometimes, but it's not always about having, one person grow large amounts for the community. It's the fact that you should be able to cultivate your own balanced strains, CBD. There's a terpene profile you'd like to access for whatever reason that you've done your research on. So I do think it's just that self-sustainability, not necessarily, the voices can be loud, but it's hard to access really good, high quality and consistent, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why I advocate for things like the Pennington Institute. Like I had Reese Cohen from the Pennington Institute on the show, and I shared some of the things I don't agree with. Like I don't agree with THC limits. I don't agree with plain
Yeah.
packaging. But these might be methods to getting cannabis more acceptable, and these are the compromises we need to understand and accept. And it's much the same with quality cannabis. Like if I had like in Vancouver, these guys would come and be like, oh, my uncle on Vancouver Island grows the best shit. I'm like, I bet he does, but I can't get it. So I need these stores, I need this system, even as an
Yeah.
experienced cannabis consumer. So, you know, I think it's naive to not want it to be bigger and better. I understand the concerns within the community and, you know, people wanting to protect it, not wanting it to be ruined by corporate entities and things like that. But God, I just want my mum to be able to walk into a shop and get a cream. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
And I also want everyone to be able to grow on their own. So we can kind of have it all, but much like you're doing, you kind of have to work on this from the inside out, right?
Yeah, definitely. I remember in the clinic space, and this was so probably just over a year ago when all of the regulatory, the regulatory rapid response unit was happening. There was doctors coming under fire. We pivoted very quickly in the clinic, a fantastic high level care medical clinic. So definitely not a script and go clinic, but it was very obvious that the volume of patients, the volume of product, the consistency, the price point available, it's something that the black market, and I'm quite vocal about this, it's something that the black market just cannot manage on its own. And I do think this whole conversation of, legal versus legacy, for the most part, will simmer down once people are able to cultivate their own.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I
that's it.
genuinely think,
Yeah.
yeah.
You don't have to be offended by medical prices if you can grow your own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Like you're not gonna have a grind, a grind to axe, an axe to grind. That's standard me. Um, when someone feels that they have the autonomy to be able to cultivate their own medicine, because really it does come down to the fact that just because there's a license there, whether it's from the ODC or any other international space that's cultivating in a legal medical market, why the average adult also cannot do that themselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't need a license to grow.
Yeah, no, it's a big thing, and it's like, you know, I appreciate the work of the Legalized Cannabis Party and places like that. You know, I think the Legalized Cannabis Party is another one that cops a lot of flack for like kind of being mainstream and trying to make these causes mainstream when, you know, I
Yep.
know a bunch of people in the Northern Rivers can grow really good cannabis for themselves. I can't down here in Melbourne. So, you know, that's what
Yeah.
we're fighting for. I want some home grow. I want some recreational stores. I'm all for it. Working and existing in this space, you know, I think you and I could probably say that we're fortunate to an extent for, you know, stigma kind of constantly declining, but we know that it's very much real. It's not gone. Like you mentioned before, you are a woman, you are a mother, and I'm kind of acutely aware that it's harder for someone in your position, you know, for society to see you as a normal person. You know, like an aging, overweight, bearded guy. You know, it's not a surprise I smoke cannabis. For you, you know, you do present like an incredibly normal person. How do you see stigma changing over time? Where do we still need to do the work? Where is it even still inside the medicinal system?
Yeah, stigma is still very rife. I actually was quite surprised being in the medical world, just even for the pharmacist, the stigma for dispensing this Schedule 8 medication in comparison to others, feeling like they were legal dealers, and doctors not even wanting to listen to, our operations manager wanting to onboard really great GPs, and just GPs not even wanting to go near it, just that kind of legal dealer style of thinking. And while that is a very real part of it, there's also so many larger, greater things that happen. So it was amazing, yeah, just to witness other doctors be judged by other doctors, or vice versa with the pharmacists or dispense techs. That was quite amazing. But I think that for women, and look, it's a much more nuanced conversation. I think women are, perceived to be a certain way, whether you're single, married, you've got kids, the age group you're in as well. No one probably bats an eyelid if a 19-year-old smokes a joint and has fun with her friends at a festival. But when you're doing it at my age, 34, at the end of the evening, and you're a mother, and then people go, well, how do you look after your children? Like, what does your family think? Like, it's just this really interesting judgment, and it just shines a light on the acceptance of alcohol and prescriptions and even other drugs, other illicit drugs. That does become more the norm than it is for cannabis usage. I don't think the driving laws do any good for us as well. It was quite amazing to see the amount of patients that were so desperate. In my clinic, it was a majority sleep specialty. So a lot of people with insomnia, a lot of people that really are struggling, and sleep is a massive factor, and it affects pain and mental health and immune system and just functionality. But they turn it down. And I go, oh, I know CBD is great. That can get you so far, but try this balanced oil. And due to it just having THC in there, and the risk here, I'm in New South Wales. Obviously, you're down in Victoria. You've got some different laws down
Well,
there,
yeah, we
thanks to your
basically have
ACT party.
like a temporary exemption. Like it's not the
Yeah.
whole way there. We still have to go to court, but you now have an ability to defend yourself, and the magistrate no longer has to take your license, and the cops have to prove impairment. So nothing has changed about my consumption, but my confidence has changed drastically. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't consuming and jumping in the car. I was always making sensible decisions, and I had to make decisions like, work somewhere I could walk to and things like that. Like I made real conscious decisions like that in my life. And thankfully some of those pressures have gone. And that's all we're looking for. We're not looking for, I want to smoke a joint whilst I'm driving, or blaze
100%,
up and jump in
yeah.
the car. It's just about living a normal life. And I now feel
Yeah.
I can do that. My wife is
My
complaining that she's
wife.
kind of losing her night driving ability, like her eyes are failing her. I, you
Yeah.
know, I don't have to keep making her drive everywhere just because I consumed cannabis last night.
And you're right. It's about that confidence in just being like, I'm a grown adult, I'm a law abiding citizen when it
Yeah.
comes to our road rules. Like, I'm not out there to harm anyone. No one's essentially, I can probably generalize and say none of us in the cannabis community are getting off our heads, off our dials, completely medicated and thinking, I'm going to go out there and get behind the wheel, right? I'm going to cause some damage, cause some harm, right? But I think that's the general notion that I can pick up on for non-cannabis users. I guess in my world, I'm absolutely surrounded by cannabis users. So I do kind of feel like I live in a different world sometimes. But for the others, they just think, how irresponsible, how dangerous of you to consume THC and then think you can drive your kids to school the next day. And that's where I just want to push back on it. And that just comes down to education as well. At the moment, it's in the doctor's hands, and they're so tired about the really matter of fact conversations that they can have. There are changes on the horizon. You've got it in Victoria, Tasmania have it. We're looking at it here in New South Wales. I think that's one of the biggest things, especially for women. If we're, the main caretakers, let's say, and we're running around with the kids and getting groceries and after school sport and play dates and all the things, if we feel confident in our ability to be autonomous and be responsible and know that we can live a fulfilled life without that fear in the back of your head. If I get pulled over right now, I know that I'm going to have the presence of it in my system,
Yeah.
but I know I am not impaired. And that is a pang. And I know this will be for everyone over the upcoming Christmas season. We all know what it's like to fear those random roadside drug tests, knowing that we're all good. Remember last year even, hubby and I took the kids all the way up across the border over to Queensland, and the fear for us being completely sober,
Yeah.
unimpaired for that whole drive, thinking, what would happen if we got pulled over and they take our license? Like, what does that mean for our life, for our future, our jobs, and even just in that moment? So I think the driving laws is a huge change that needs to happen. And just the general criminalisation over possession and cultivation of the plant. Yeah, once that moves forward, there's a few prongs to it, but yeah.
I think attitudes are a big part of it. You even mentioned kind of some of the stigma within the medical profession. Like I've spoken to doctors who said that they're the laughing stock amongst their friends because they're a
Yeah.
cannabis doctor, or they're not even a cannabis doctor. They just use it as part of their toolkit, and it's still so heavily criticized. I think like if with your experience and knowledge and the worlds colliding, if you could give pharmacists, doctors like a one pager or a couple of dot points for cannabis, what would you immediately want them to know, like the general field?
Cannabis shouldn't be the last resort.
Yeah. Yeah.
It should not be the last resort. I genuinely believe it should be one of the first tools in the toolkit, along with nutrition and diet, exercise and physiology, mental health practices. Like, we really need to go back to some basics there as far as looking at a holistic perspective of treating our symptoms and ailments as humans. And cannabis doesn't have to be the last resort. And I know it's not them making that rule where, the TGA, APRA, they're just saying, make sure you're trying other medications beforehand. And I find that very difficult for a lot of the community that know cannabis is what they need, because people are using it and growing it, whether it's legal or not. And it'll continue to happen, and it's happened for a long time. So I think being able to have the confidence to speak up to your pharmacist or prescriber and saying, I don't want to go through the loopholes of what some of these other medications do. Because even trying to titrate on a new medication to then come off it, it's a whole thing in itself.
I do want to talk a little bit more about legacy and corporate. I'm curious, because you tread the line of the two, do you face any like personal criticism from either side about your connection to the other?
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually copped the biggest influx of hate from the traditional community, which hasn't happened before. I've kind of been labeled a bit as the people's princess, but for the most part, when you do controversial things like bring on let's say a controversial figure from a publicly listed cannabis company, everyone's got different experiences with other people, and we all, we don't all align, right?
Yeah.
So I did find it interesting that when I did the live a few weeks ago that was blending medical and legacy, yeah, there was a lot of people that pushed back as far as people selling out, this
Yeah,
notion,
yeah.
people selling out. And like, I get it, but I'm also like, what do we just expect to do this all for free? That no one's going to go out and make money and make a living for themselves or be profitable? Like, is that the worst thing in the world to happen? And then from a legal side, or like a licensed medical legal, yeah, definitely. I can see that there are some that do not align with my messaging. And while there are some very serious things going on in the cannabis world, I do think that Cannabis, for the most part, is meant to make us feel well, right? So when we're feeling well, we're in a better state of mind, we're feeling good, we kind of, and as adults, we kind of lose our play and our joy and our fun a little bit. And that can bring it back. And so while medicinal cannabis is very serious and there are people that are doing the wrong thing and there are doctors out there and there are patients having adverse reactions for sure, for the most part, it can actually be fun. I think that's where maybe that looks a bit too med rec for some, but it's also the truth.
Yeah, there's that good phrase where it's like, just because it feels good, it's still medicine.
Yeah.
I've butchered it there, but that's the sentiment.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
medicine can feel good. Like, that's kind of the great thing about cannabis. Like, I can get a little high at the end of the day, ease my woes, and lift my mood.
100%. Like, I'm out here for everyone to be living their best lives. We are in such an interesting moment in the world in general with what is going on. And I think if it can start from within, like within your 5 kilometer radius, I like to deal with I can in my small little circle, in my family, in myself. And if we all did that, that reverberation of energy and frequency goes out to the rest of society and the world. And if cannabis and this plant can play a part in that, as it has done for so long, then that's not always a bad thing.
I like that, Jess. This is a little self-congratulatory pat on the back, but yesterday morning I had a little doobie, went out into my neighborhood and picked up trash. So, like,
There you go,
here's me
man.
contributing to my
You've done your
community.
bit.
Exactly. That's where you can make an impact. Like, there's so many global issues, there's so many national issues that are creating pressure and, and pain and challenge for people. But yeah, it's kind of nice to just look a little bit closer to home and go, what can I do, with the joy that this plant brings me. So that's really nice. We're going to take a little break now from the serious cannabis chat and have some fun with a quick 5-question multiple choice quiz about female rappers and hip hop stars and cannabis connections. So I would like to know, before we start the quiz though, Jess, I always ask the guests, what's a topic you love talking about? Why is it that, rap, hip hop, and particularly female rappers and hip hop stars was your choice of topic?
Well, I did say to you, it made me be a bit introspective into the other hobbies that I do have. I guess living and breathing cannabis certainly, you can feel like, you just live in that world 24/7. But I guess the music kind of taps into it a little bit. I'm a bit of a multifaceted being. I'm not just one type of gal. So, what I love about women in hip hop and rap is we can be soft and sultry one moment and be gangster boss bitches the next, and everything in between.
I might be putting you on the spot here, but is there a Mount Rushmore? Like, is there a top 4? How would you place the female rappers throughout history?
Oh, interesting. I love Erica Badu. Different vibe, but she's up there for sure. I do. Oh, I was like Megan the Stallion, Cardi B. They're my girls for
Hell
sure.
yeah. It sounds like you're crossing eras then.
I am. Yeah, I definitely am.
All right. Well, this quiz is called High Notes. We love to learn from the quiz. So, Jess, I would not know these answers. So I'm just prefacing
I
that
hope
saying
I do.
I would definitely not know these answers. So we may just learn together, or you may kick ass, or both. So, question 1. Which iconic rapper launched her own cannabis line called Aphrodisiac in 2022? Was it Megan Thee Stallion, Rihanna, or Lil Kim?
I'd say Rihanna.
Denied. So it was actually Lil Kim, announced in 2021 at MJ BizCon. Lil Kim says her brand is fashion forward at the intersection of lifestyle and cannabis. However, doing some research, the website is broken and I can't find much information about that brand anymore, so I don't know if it lasted very well.
No, maybe not. We do find the hype when we get the rappers bringing out cultivars. It doesn't always land that well.
It really doesn't. Like, again, to bring up my experience in Canada, I was there when Seth Rogen brand dropped Houseplant, Wiz Khalifa's Khalifa Kush extracts, Snoop Dogg's Leaf by Snoop. Like, they're not The name does not carry them. It has to be a good product. And that's something I kind of love about the cannabis community is they'll go, oh yeah, I'll give it a try. But if it sucks, I'm not just going to buy it because,
Yeah.
Dan Balzerian, Instagram influencer, Drake, their brands failed in Canada because people are like, this isn't good enough for what you think it is. So
Yeah.
there's still that kind of proof is in the pudding, even with celebrity brands in cannabis.
100%.
All right, you're 0 from 1, but we're learning.
We are learning. Yeah. That's why I was like, oh, look, Kim. I haven't heard of that. Makes sense why.
Yeah, it failed.
Yeah.
Question 2. Which rapper famously joined an anti-drug campaign at the height of their fame in 1997? Was it Nicki Minaj, Lady of Rage, or Lauryn Hill?
Anti-drug. Interesting. Lauryn Hill?
That is correct.
That is correct. So, appearing in a PSA for the Office of National Drug Control Policy, Lauryn Hill claimed that drugs ruin lives and it's something she needs to be more mindful of as she becomes a mother. So, yes, just joining in on the PSA train there, letting people know that drugs are bad.
Yes, drugs are bad, plant is good.
Exactly. Question 3. Which hip-hop star released the iconic single Pass That Dutch in 2003? Was it Cardi B, Lil' Kim, or Missy Elliott?
Not past the Dutchie. The old school one? No.
No. So Pass the Dutchie is the Bob Marley and the Wailers, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? So this is Pass the Dutch, Pass That Dutch, 2003.
Nicki?
Denied.
Nicki wasn't even one of the options there.
Really? Oh my God.
2003, Nicki Minaj was not a thing there, Jess. So that was, I'm going to pick on you for this one. This was Missy Elliott. This was this brought the phrase to 14-year-old Paul's attention. Like, I did not know what Pass That Dutch meant. And here it was, the hook of a mainstream song. I am disappointed in you here, Jess. Very disappointed.
I'm disappointed in myself, to be honest.
The quiz is more stressful than people give it credit for, more than I give it credit for.
I agree. It's like, oh, yeah. All right.
We'll
get that one.
There's still hope here. There's still hope. Question 4. Which female rapper was booted from a New York hotel in 2017 for allegedly consuming cannabis in the hotel, despite claiming they do not smoke weed because they get very paranoid? Was it Cardi B, Doja Cat, or Missy Elliott?
Well, I know Doja loves her weed, but who is option number 1?
So we've got Cardi B, Doja Cat, or Missy Elliott.
Okay, I'm going to go with Cardi.
That is correct.
That is correct indeed. Right. So Cardi B claims that it was not her and that it was a racist maneuver because there was just an assumption made that she was the one smoking cannabis. And she also claims that everyone knows I don't smoke weed. So I don't know if everyone knows that, but hey, I'm putting it out there now to my few hundred listeners.
There you go. Cardi is not a consumer, guys.
All right, you are 2 from 4, and this is the the breaker here. You win or you lose on this question. No pressure.
Cool.
Question 5. Which legendary rapper released the song Fire It Up in 1994? A song about cannabis with such iconic lines like, we like to smoke, we like to smoke, we like to smoke, baby. Was it Dub Rat, Eve, or Queen Latifah? I'll give those to you again. Dub Rat, Eve, or Queen Latifah?
All right. When in doubt, go see Queen Latifah. And I was like,
that is denied. Dub Rat has been normalizing female consumption in the mainstream for over 30 years, and this song featured on her album Funkified. And once again, those iconic lines, we like to smoke, we like to smoke, we like to smoke, baby. So that was 2 from 5, a little bit of an education. We could call that the miseducation of Jess Peros. That was High Notes, a quiz about female rappers and cannabis. Well done.
Thank you. I did learn something.
Excellent. All right. Well, as we head towards the tail end of this show, I want to talk about kind of building a compassionate cannabis future. When you talk to patients, what is it that they really want? When you're talking to the true, and it's not to diss the culture, but the people who really are going, look, I'm not that familiar with cannabis. I'm typically not that comfortable. I've consumed it before. I've been paranoid. I have had the bad edible experience. What do they want? What are they looking for when they go to get legitimate medical care?
I think for the biggest part is accessibility as far as where do I go that isn't going to lock me into, a certain product or brand? They want brand agnostic clinics. They want doctors that understand that their access for whatever products that they're after, so whether that be, oils, topicals, flowers, pessaries of all different formulations, that asking the question, what do you think about this? Can I have this? Or I've done my research on XYZ, that basic conversation isn't going to be met with stigma and judgment. And I know it sounds wild because you can ring a cannabis clinic that prescribes and dispenses cannabis, but still the conversation around asking for cannabis doesn't always land that well. I think we've got some regulatory issues happening at the moment that are causing doctors to be very conservative, and so be it. I think they're a bit shook, to be honest. No one wants to come under fire. There's so many doctors that are. And then that affects the patient's experience, to be fair. So they just want to know that when and if they're allowed access, right? Obviously, there's steps that have to be gone through, but that they feel respected by their doctor. They can access a certain type of product if that's what they wish, and that they're not going to be judged for it.
And you're right, that it is simple, but it's unfortunately not the experience of a lot of people. And I think that's the true challenge here. While we're wrapped up in this idea that people are taking advantage, and some people are. Like, I feel like it's, my analogy for this is I used to work at a liquor store in Canada who had 100% customer satisfaction policy, which meant that if someone had a problem with the liquor they bought, they could return it, no questions asked, for a replacement. My first question, being Australian, because this was in Canada, was, don't people abuse that? The answer was no. Like, and the manager was just like, one or two people might abuse it, but hundreds of people are happy because of it. People, just because a couple of people are going to take advantage of us doesn't mean we withhold it from the others. And I thought that was such a sensible lesson. And I feel like we do the opposite of that here in Australia. Some doctors fuck around, we punish every doctor. Some patients fuck around, we punish every patient. And I think it's beyond the cannabis industry too. It's our road rules. It's our approach to social cohesion. It's like, a few people are mucking up, you're all in trouble. So it's difficult because I think the solutions are simple. You've presented some pretty coherent, easy solutions there that have this barrier of legal red tape, of concern, of fear. So your solutions are simple, Jess. They're just not simple to implement, unfortunately.
No, not in the current structure that it is. And I do think it's a bit of a square peg, round hole situation at the moment.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. Having worked across roles, advisor, educator, advocate, what lesson kind of keeps proving itself to be true? Or, what understanding even a stereotype that just keeps popping up?
What was really eye-opening for me is my first time working in any medical kind of realm was that there is definitely something to be said that medical is profit-driven. That was really obvious. I saw products being prescribed to certain patient groups that should have lower price point access that didn't. Dispensing fees were chucked on top, and if we just put a little bit of extra cream on top as well, seeing, sometimes the amount of scripts that people were on, they might not have needed all of them, but, great purchasing frequency through as well. It just little things like that made me go, this is a bit of a profit-driven side to it. That's just one side to it. But I'd heard it. I just never experienced it. But I think also the other thing was never underestimate the plant's ability to bring people together. Yeah. For those that operate and move in the circles of what we would consider cannabis culture, what was one of the most amazing lessons that I got to learn was the patients that stabilized, had beautiful outcomes on whatever their medicinal cannabis product was, then start to, go down the rabbit hole a little bit. Start researching strains, movies, songs, groups, activists, kind of, unraveling it all and realizing why there is a community around this, and then feeling a part of it. And that's what I loved. I loved, you don't have to be the biggest culture head and best grower in the world and use all the buzzwords that like, and be, you know, cannabis expert to be a part of this community. But you do got to have a love for this plant and what it can do for people. And once complete, like I'm talking ex-first responders, ex-police officers, having experience through decades of illegality of cultivation and, you know, seeing the worst of the worst. The police don't see the good side of it. They see the worst of the worst. And then for whatever reason, PTSD, pain, coming to the plant and then realizing, hang on a sec, I want to talk to my mate that like knows about all those strains, or he used to make his butter back in the day. And just having that discernment or that different perspective. And just as humans, that's what we need in general. But to look at one another and not judge them for maybe the plant that they consume and realize that that community and that culture is strong. You could be on any side of the world, not even speaking the same languages, but you could share cannabis together. And that's just such a beautiful thing. That's how we bring people together.
That is lovely. It is one of the, like, it can be the only thing you have in common, and you can have the best night with someone who might be on the different side of the political aisle to you, different social beliefs to you. And, you know, you still got to draw the line at morally reprehensible things. But
yeah, for sure.
You know, I live in a lefty Melbourne bubble. I'm a proud progressive. You know, I'm sure some people would call me woke and things like that. And then I'm sure there's people that wouldn't think I'm woke enough. You know, we're always sitting in some edge of the spectrum. But I do love leaving this bubble, remembering that there's a great big world out there. There are conservative viewpoints. There are genuinely lovely people who believe completely opposite things to you. And I think, you know, in such a, to circle back to what you're talking about, keeping things local, you know, we've got this big global view. We can over-consume what is wrong with the world. Ultimately, this plant brings people together. You and I are testament to that, you know, where we were internet friends first.
We were. And look, running the platform that I do on Instagram and TikTok, although they took my TikTok page, which was sad, but, you know, I'm still thriving on IG, but it is genuinely like the community that I have and I interact with all over Australia. Like I fly to Perth and their cannabis community welcome me in. I go to Brisbane and that cannabis community welcomes me in. I just went down to Melbourne for the Cannabis conference and touched base with the cultivators. We ran a patient consumption event with a couple of brands at Can Life Dispensary. It was amazing. People that we are connecting because of our love of the plant, and then we get together in real life. I don't know. It's one of the most beautiful things about this all. Like it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's magic.
Some of my friends keep joking that like I'm approaching 40 and still making new friends. They're like, how and why are you still hanging out with new people? Like, because it's cannabis, man. Like, it's just so good to just have these chats and to find something in common, learn new things about different people just because you're like, you know, I'm a indica guy, you know, some of my best friends are sativa guys. Even figuring that stuff out, we've all been smoking bad black market weed for years, you know. Then we've got this medicinal system. All of a sudden you're exploring things. Hey, have you tried this? Do you want this? I'm getting excited just talking about it now.
No, and the community is growing. It is forever growing. Like I said, whether there's a medical system or not, cannabis consumption is on the rise. Alcohol consumption is reducing. We know more than we've ever known, and the ability with all this technology and platforms that we have, one of the beauties of it is that we're all connecting. So, you know, let's be loud.
Let's be loud indeed. Well, I think the kind of last thing I want to focus on is that it's not exclusive in this scenario because there needs to be a celebration of women in this space. You know, like more and more we are talking about the need for women to be involved at higher levels of corporate. You know, the cannabis industry has almost been seen as this opportunity, yet we know that women still don't have, you know, a seat at the table in the way. You are focusing on, you know, creating a space for people that identify as women, a more feminine side of cannabis. I got to be honest, I don't feel excluded by that. You know, I don't go, oh, you know, why those girls got a club and I don't. It's really beautiful. What does inclusion look like to you, and why is it important to celebrate the feminine side of cannabis?
I think it's just important to feel like, not even to feel like, to know that we have a voice as women in this space. It is a very male-dominated industry. I think you have to be strong and steadfast in your purpose if you're a woman in this industry, to have the voice that others may not have, and that's fine. It takes so many of us to make the world go round. But for those of us that are really championing women in cannabis and women in the plant, we've had, I guess we can probably relate a little bit to the plant. Prohibition, stigma, rules placed on us that were never meant to be there in the first place. So when you really get down to the conscious level of it, it's another freedom of us that we deserve to have afforded to us. And I'll be able to do my bit for the plant, for the women now, and for ahead of us. James and I have two beautiful little girls, and I will damn sure they might not want anything to do with the plant or this industry, and it'll probably go that way. How funny. But I will make sure that they don't grow up with a world where stigma against women and wellness, like living our best lives as women, pain-free, fantastic mental health, support from our community and the ones around us, no roadblocks. And if the roadblocks are there, we have this ability and this knowing that anything is possible.
Well, Jess, our last segment is called Pools of Wisdom. This is where we try to leave the listener with a key takeaway, dinner party fact, or call to action. And though we love the long form conversation, let's leave them with one last little message. So, Jess, what is your pool of wisdom?
Yes, pool of wisdom. I have a few, but I think what I want to highlight the most is that ACT in 2020 allowed the possession, but more importantly, the cultivation of 2 plants per adult, up to 4 per household. And yes, while it isn't the greatest model out there, we now can look back after 5 years and see that there was no increase representations to hospital. There was actually a decrease in cannabis-related crimes, and there was no increase in home invasions. The old saying, the sky didn't fall in. And one of the sticking points that some like to say about home grow is that it is too potent. And it's funny because on a legacy market, we're not growing for potency. We're growing for flavor and terpene profiles. And one thing that really counters that is the ACT home growers were able to submit samples. And while it came back at 9 to 11%, which some may look at that and think that's quite low, it just showed that the home grow isn't more dangerous than the licensed grow. And we're just able to be afforded these rights and live our best lives. So home grow did nothing of the scare campaign that everyone thought it may.
It's almost disappointing that 5 years on, it isn't more broadly introduced across the country and even refined in Canberra. Because like you alluded to, there are some issues with it. You can only grow outdoors. You can't get seeds anywhere. You can't gift it to anyone. And they might have seemed like really drastic things 5 years ago to include in the legislation. But I think I'm disappointed that there was no mechanism to review and go, oh, look, things are okay. Sky hasn't fallen in. Let's update this a little bit. Like Michael Pedersen from the Labor Party, who introduced that bill, openly admitted 5 years ago, yep, I don't use cannabis, it's not for me, but I have, and it's not the end of the world. And you want to hope that when you see that stuff, that bigger change is afoot and faster. We just have to accept that it's quite slow, but I think that's very wise. If only ACT's model could be extended a little bit further, there'd be a lot of happy people.
There will be.
Well, Jess, thanks again for being on the show. It's been nice to finally make it happen. You're a dear friend. I value everything that you do in the space. I value your thoughts, your positions, your wisdom, your loveliness in general. Please let the listeners know where they can find you online. I will, of course, link these things in the show notes, but where can they get in touch with you?
So definitely at thegreenroom.hq on Instagram. Some of the other social media platforms aren't so friendly, so just find me there. You'll see a landing page and website come online shortly where we'll be able to have a safe haven for all of our content. Because as we know, guys, being in this space and working with the social media conglomerates aren't always easy. But always LinkedIn, reach out. My email's on there as well.
So that's Jessica Peros at LinkedIn. That's the Green Room HQ on Instagram. You can find me at giveandtoke.com.au. Email us, Instagram, all that. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Paul.